Welcome to Woodshop 101, a woodworking audio podcast geared toward the hobby weekend woodworker. Our hosts for the show are Jeremy Crawford and Drew Shore. Join these two different craftsmen for a lighthearted banter about everything in woodworking, online education, and how they produce content. Topics could include the latest news, tips, tricks, and designs, to include furniture, crafts, and shop projects. Welcome to episode number 12. Today we'll talk about joinery, basics to more advanced, and the tools needed to complete them. And I would like to remind you guys, if you listen to the show on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating. It helps us reach a greater audience. Like the one from Miter Mike's Woodshop. He said, "You guys are doing great with the content. I wasn't a fan of the podcast, but now I have wireless headphones. I listen to you guys while I'm in the shop. I wish you guys good luck and hope you'll be on for many years."
Thanks, Miter Mike.
I know. It's pretty exciting when we hear from another YouTube woodworker, and especially that they're leaving iTunes comments. And
it's positive.
Yeah, and I'm glad that he's finally listening to podcasts. So should have got those wireless headphones years ago there, Miter Mike.
Now, if he's like me, he's probably got a wallet with moths in it that fly out every time he opens it.
Oh yeah, that's like me. In fact, I opened mine up today and I had we have a grocery store down here called HEB, and they do HEB Buddy Bucks. And they look like little green paper money, and the kids go put them in a little machine, and it spits out points, and they collect these points for all sorts of different rewards. Every time I open that, I just have lines of Buddy Bucks in there, and I'm like, oh, if that was only real money, it'd be so awesome. And so today, my son, he was like, "Do you still have my Buddy Bucks in your wallet?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure, because I don't have anything else in there." So
I'd be like, "No, they're mine."
They're mine. I'm playing. I want that pencil sharpener. So, what's been going on in your shop?
Vacation.
I mean, well, yeah. So, if you listeners haven't heard, Drew and I both have been on that air quote here vacation status for the last few weeks. We've both been trying to find time to put this show out, and we didn't want to miss one, so we just kept delaying it. So hopefully next week's will be on time.
What was that show we did a few weeks ago about goal setting?
Well, we did. We set goal to have vacation. We spent family time. That was
the
goal.
vacation is priority.
It is. It is. Because then you get burnt out. And when you get burnt out, you don't want to do anything. And it makes everything seem like a chore.
Well, I will say that has been an issue with me as far as getting out in the shop and making videos. That's why I've been on vacation for the past 2 weeks. I think I haven't put anything out since then. And I've kind of done a lot of soul searching, I guess, because with my job and my family and the time necessary to spend time out in the shop versus spending time with my daughter and wife, and I don't know, I'm putting these videos out every week is getting to be very difficult and almost not fun. And I always said when it got to be not fun, I was going to kind of change it up to where I could make it more enjoyable to me. And I think that's why I've been taking some of this time off, is to kind of reset and decide on kind of how I was going to approach it from now on. But I don't see myself putting out a video every week now, unless something changes. I might do it about every other week. It's getting very complicated to get out in the shop every week.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and that's probably why, I think I still have only 8 videos on YouTube. I mean, between doing commissions and then just family time and my job, it is hard to get out to produce a video, an entire project, and record it every week, especially when, you have young kids and
a full-time job.
Yeah. So, there's people out there that do it, and that's awesome. And would I love to do it? Yeah, I'd love to get out there every week and put out a video or a blog article. But I just physically don't have that much time. Right now, I can think of probably 10 projects sitting out in the shop that need to be done before I can actually even record anything. So as I work through that, maybe January will be the spot for me to actually start recording. But then again, I may be moving in about 4 months, so I may be without a shop for a while. I don't know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I agree with you. It gets pretty stressful. So vacation was much needed. I'm glad that my vacation's coming to a close. I've had a little too many kids around my house, and it has stressed me out. In fact, today was the first time I got back out in the shop. About 2 weeks, maybe a little longer. Every time I thought about going out there, it just made me, I guess, not look forward to it or regret going out there. So I needed that time away, and got back out there. A little too late. I am in the middle of refurbishing or rehabbing or bringing back to life, whatever you want to call it, this antique like jewelry armoire or lingerie chest for my wife for our anniversary, which is on Monday. It will not be done probably by then. But it's too late now. She walked out in the shop and saw it today and was like, "What's that?" I was like, "Nothing."
It's not for you.
She said, "It's clearly something." And she's like, "And I don't remember you talking about a new commission." I was like, "Well, happy anniversary, babe." And then she proceeded to try to drill me with questions, and I was like, "No, just go away. You'll see it when it gets done." So,
does she even know what it is? Did you
I
tell
don't
her?
know. I didn't let her get close to it and really examine it. So,
You need to keep a packing blanket or something over it.
well, it's wet paint.
Well, I didn't say it'd be perfect.
So that's what's going on in my shop. First time in a few weeks, and the painting is going a little longer than what I thought. In fact, I don't even have the entire first coat on yet. But it'll be done. It won't be done by Monday, just because I don't have any more time off. I have to work tomorrow, and I work on Monday. So I'm guessing somewhere by probably Wednesday evening, I should have it done and probably in the house. So.
Well, you sound like you're in the same kind of predicament I am. This whole weekly schedule is also kind of throwing off my quality because I'm trying to rush and get things done. I have every intention of going out on the evenings and working on a project little by little, but my sleep really suffers for it. And I'm already tired as it is come that time, and all I want to do is go to sleep. So whenever I do get out in the shop to get a video out, I'm already down to the wire to the weekend. So I just try and cram it all into one day, even do the editing late at night. And I just think my quality on my videos suffers, the quality of my projects suffer because I'm trying to rush it to get it done. I've even had in the past, I don't know, probably 2 months ago, I had a gentleman say that my quality kind of sucked. So, I didn't let it get to me, but it was something that kind of opened my eye a little bit. That whenever I first started this, I was putting a lot of time and effort into the videos, but I had more time on my hands to do it. And now, since I changed jobs, I don't really have that kind of time anymore. And my daughter's getting older now, and she wasn't then, and I don't know.
Yeah,
things are changing.
It's easier when they're babies because they sleep. When they get older, then they want daddy attention and mommy attention. It just physically sucks up. So by the time my son's in bed and I even get out to the shop, it's going to be 9 or 9:30. Well, if I'm going to be productive the next day at work, I don't need to be out in the shop until 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I've really been been taking the time off. I have one commission sitting on the workbench that needs to get finished. In fact, I did the first part of the milling on the lumber, and I was taking it so far down I was going to do it in stages, and I hadn't even touched it in a few weeks. But I'm going to really, after this Jewelry Armoire, I'm going to push through that and then probably just do what I want. If it's something small, turning a pin, something that I want to do that I don't feel pressured to do. And believe it or not, I really want to finish my wife's dining room table.
I don't believe it.
And it's not because she has hounded about it. She's been very patient. In fact, the first time she has said anything about it not being complete was last night. I'm just at the point now that I'm ready to see it finished. And that's starting to motivate me. And speaking of motivation, Mark Spagnuolo put out an article, I think yesterday or the day before, but kind of like a pep talk. And I read that, and it kind of sat with me, and I really thought about it. And when I got out in the shop today, I enjoyed it. It was me time, even though my wife and son interrupted me probably about 8 times.
Yeah.
But it was just good getting out there. I think one of the big motivational stoppers for me right now is I don't have an air-conditioned shop, and it is ridiculously hot.
I know, me neither.
Down here. I mean, I'm looking at it. I was out there probably at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock this evening, and it was still probably 95 degrees and about 90% humidity. So that, I got to get past that. I hate getting out there sweating while I woodwork. I don't mind sweating during yard work or anything else, but I hate sweating all over my tools, all over the project. And so it's something that kind of demotivates me to get out there.
Mm-hmm.
But slowly I'm going to work past it. And the wintertime, the fall, that's generally my busiest time in the shop because it's cool enough. And then the dead middle of winter, I don't really like being out there because my shop's about 40 degrees. But it's easier to heat a shop than it is to cool a shop. So maybe I'll buy a heater this year. All right, so let's jump into today's topic. I know we're wanting to talk about joinery, and we put out the question on Facebook and Twitter, what subjects or topics do we want to talk about that the listeners want to actually hear? And this was one that popped up and was talked about joinery and really the difference between them or the different types of joinery.
And what would be good for beginners.
Exactly. And so I went ahead and tacked on the tools to do them with because every joint can be done a multitude of ways. And I want to give my perspective on what tools I use to complete those. And Drew, I'm sure you have some different insight and perspective on how you make each joint. So,
I've got my opinions.
All right, so let's start off. What would your most basic joint, what would you say it is? To you, the most basic one.
Well, to any beginning woodworker, they're going to start off with a butt joint. I mean, that's just basically 2 pieces of wood that are butted up end grain to face grain, and there's no dados or cutouts or anything like that for it to fit in, and it's just pinned in place with glue and nails. Not the most structurally sound joint, simply because end grain likes to soak up wood or likes to soak up glue like a sponge. So you really have to coat it on if you want a good bond. But even so, it's still not the most structurally sound. But that's the one you come in contact with most as a beginner. Wouldn't you agree?
I'd absolutely agree. That's where I started. So
pocket screws in a butt joint would increase the structural stability a lot better than just glue and nails, just because of I guess the mechanics of how the screw is placed in the wood. So, I mean, if you don't have the necessary tools to make dados and dovetails and lock joints and all of that, pocket screws would be the next big step for a beginner to put pieces of wood together.
Okay. I would defer on that. I think a miter joint would be the next one. A well executed miter joint is a little more advanced, but I think the tools that you're going to use to cut your butt joints is the same tools you're going to use, or you could use, to create a miter. Your jigsaw, most of them tilt to 45 degrees. Your circular saw, they tilt to 45 degrees. Are they 100% accurate? No. But you already have that tool, and you could cut a miter out of it. I guess the only reason I would say it would be the next basic joint is because you don't need to buy an additional tool. You don't need to buy that pocket hole jig to be able to make a miter.
Very true. You still have to worry with structural stability of ingrain to ingrain, of course.
Yes, you do.
But yeah, you are correct. Even using a hand, just like a miter box with a handsaw, you can still cut miters with that. And
you can still pin it. You can screw through it. You can nail through it. You can drill a hole through it and run a dowel through there. But then after that, I would probably say pocket holes would be the next step for me. And Craig just seems to have cornered the market on the pocket hole jig. In fact, they're on their 5th generation of their pocket hole jig, which is the one I currently have is the K5. What do you have?
I believe I have the 3.
The K3?
It has the lever in the front instead of the back.
Yeah.
I think the K4 has it in the back.
Yeah, the K4 has it in the back, and then the K5 has it in the back.
Yeah, I have
as well.
Is it in the back on the K5?
Yeah, the K5's in the back, and it's... No. Let's see. No, it's in the front.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's in the front. Yeah, it's in the front.
I don't know why they made the change from the front to the back, from the 3 to the 4, and then back to the 5.
I had the K4, and I used it a few times, and then I ended up selling it off to another woodworker that really needed one. And in fact, I just recently picked up the K5 just a few weeks ago. I got it from Craig, and I got it really because they were going to sponsor the show, or sponsor my channel with a Craig jig for my giveaway. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and had one sent to me as well. Have I had a chance to use it? No. In fact, there's still a jig sitting on my table saw that has not been completed. Pretty sure you know what jig that is.
Yeah. If it's the same one from the last show we talked about.
In fact, it still has the plane sitting on top of it on the table saw. That was the last time I've been in the shop. So
you better get on the stick.
Yeah, and I was going to finish it this evening, but I really need to get started on this Jewelry Armoire. So,
well, I would say the glue has cured sufficiently.
Oh yeah, I probably don't need to put screws through the runner right now. That glue's probably not going to go anywhere. So, well,
that's another good, since we're kind of segueing into that. What would you? Let's see. We've got the miter. We've got the Craig jig. We've got the butt joint. As far as limited tools, what would you what would you think would be the next one in line? Because there's not a whole lot of that you can do with limited tools unless you're using chisels and things like that.
Yeah, as far as the next one in line with limited tools, I don't know. I honestly, I can't think of a joint that wouldn't require you to have at least some other tool like a table saw or some hand planes.
Mm-hmm. Or chisels and things like that. So
if we're going that route, and we're going to go with like a hand plane or a router, if we're going to do a router, I mean, you can pretty much a router and a table saw, you can do every joint out there.
Mm-hmm.
So ease of use, ease of put together, I would say is probably a dado on one side that's thick enough for the piece of wood. So if you're doing like a 90-degree angle, one side's going to have a dado done in it, thick enough for you to butt joint your other piece into it. I would say that's probably going to be the next easiest one.
It's also probably the one that you want to segue into as far as experience level.
Yeah.
Having dados in your projects tend to make it easier to assemble because you know exactly where the wood is supposed to go. There's no guesswork. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a few ways that you can do it. You can have offset tongue and groove, which is essentially a dado in one piece of wood, and kind of like a rabbet joint or a rabbet cut on the end of another piece of wood, and they fit together like that. You can have a full thickness dado, which accepts the 3/4 inch piece. But whenever you make these, the mechanics, and if you've ever seen, I think it's Down to Earth Woodworker, I think he did a test on the different depths of dados and how they hold up under stress. And this is, I already knew this part from New Yankee Workshop, but he did dados that had 1/8 inch depth, 1/4 inch depth, 1/2 inch. I think that's as far as he went, and wanted to test the glue surface area versus the stress that it's put under to see how it would hold up. And what he came to figure out was on a 3/4 inch piece of wood, having a 1/4 inch depth or a third of the depth, basically. So if your wood's 3/4 of an inch thick, you only want to go 1/4 of an inch deep for your dado. He found that held up the best versus all of the other depths. So that's the rule of thumb I've always applied to my dados whenever I cut them on the table saw, is just cut a third of the depth. So if it's a 1/2 inch piece of wood, you want to try and do an 1/8 inch, but if you need a little bit more material inside, sometimes I've gone to a 1/4 inch, but that just depends on your own personal preference. But most of the time when I'm using 3/4 inch plywood, I only go a 1/4 inch deep.
Yeah, and when we're talking dados, we're talking about through dados. Stop dados get a little more tricky, and you have to either, if you're gonna do a stop dado with your table saw, you're gonna need hand tools to really finesse it. You're gonna need like a router plane or something to really flatten that bottom and bring it all the way back to where you need it. Or you're gonna need a router and some kind of stops to make them pretty accurate. So a stop dado to me is going to be a little more on the more advanced side. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum. So we talked basic. We talked the most basic. What would you consider is the most advanced joint?
Not to go into very detailed, but advancement would probably have to say, I would have to say Dovetails. I'm sure that there's probably something more advanced, but I haven't dove into that yet.
I would agree with you. Only on one aspect of it, though. Hand-cut dovetails,
yes,
to me, is the most advanced. If you have a jig, then I would rate those several
Probably
steps
intermediate.
below the advanced. Yeah, probably around the intermediate, because most jigs are very dummy proof. I mean, it may take some smarts to set the jig up, but then once the jig's set up, it's run your router through it, and generally you're pretty good. So hand cut dovetails, I would say, is probably one of the most advanced, just because of the precision it generally takes, or because of the scare it gives newer woodworkers to want to attempt it. After that, I would say probably the Mortise and Tenon would get.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
That to me would be, I don't know, it may be tied for the most difficult. And I'm only saying that because there's so many different ways to cut it, and there's so many different types of Mortise and Tenon joints. Like you have a Hotch tenon, you have through Mortise and Tenons, which have to be a little more precise than hidden. So I would say that's probably up there with dovetails on being difficult-wise. However, I wouldn't say any of them can't be completed by a beginner woodworker. Just because they're more advanced joints shouldn't scare you away from doing a more advanced technique as a basic or beginner woodworker.
I wouldn't necessarily attempt it on a super nice project that you're thinking of doing unless you have just had previous experience with doing it, but maybe practice first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you even get people like Mark Spagnolo or Shannon Rogers, which is primary hand tool person. He still practices his hand cut dovetails on the pieces of scrap before he jumps into his project. You know, that's they call it a warm up. You're getting yourself warmed up and ready to complete the project. So even your most advanced woodworkers are going to have a practice time before they actually do it in their project. So I would say
if you don't practice either, you're never going to get good at them. I mean, just don't be scared of trying it, even if it's not a project. You can just grab two pieces of scraps like you were talking about and just try and attempt it. And the more you do, the better you get. I mean, that's just common knowledge.
And if you don't have the tools to complete a certain joint that you want, then don't put it aside and say, I'll never do that, or I can't do that, I don't have the tools. Set yourself a project and say, okay, on this project, I want to do a through Mortise and Tenon, or I want to do a Mortise and Tenon, or a machine cut or hand cut dovetail, whatever the type of joint is, and give yourself a goal. You know, we talked about goal setting. Give yourself a goal. Okay, I want to do this on one project this year. Save up and buy the tools necessary to complete that joint. You know, if you need a marking knife, or if you want to do table saw cut tenons, then save up and buy a tenoning jig, or YouTube it and create your homemade.
Make your own.
Exactly. I mean, some people like me, I don't get the thrill out of making a ton of jigs. I would rather spend the $100 or the $80 and buy a tenoning jig. But that really goes with, you know, where's your patience level on it? Do you want to do it and want to do it now? Well, if that's the case, then you need to create the jig. Or if you're okay with waiting a month or two or 3 or 6, however long, until you can save up that $100 to buy that tenoning jig, then go that route. But use your goal setting to help you along your woodworking path on joinery, and decide when you want to complete a joint and buy the tools necessary to complete that joint. And practice. Don't just do it one time and be like, oh, it came out horrible, I don't want to do it again. It's going to come out horrible. Every beginner's does. I don't know of any beginner that cut a joint that came out perfect. You know, I've been woodworking for many years now, and sometimes I still botch a joint that I have to go back and try to fix.
Yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, it's usually in a project when we botch it.
Yeah, that's the case. Or you find out that the jig you created really isn't a true 90 degrees anymore. Like this last project I did a mitered lid on the pin display case. I did a mitered lid, and somehow from the last time I made miters with that mitering jig on my table saw, they were dead on, to this time they were way off. So could wood movement be an issue? Probably. But, you know, it happens. Everybody botches a joint now and then. Just don't let it discourage you from trying again. So, I don't know.
Since we're... Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that we were talking about tools and things like that on what we could do to make these joints. And I would have to say that probably what I use the most, and I'm talking 85% of the time to make my joints, whether it be dados or rabbet joints, locking joints, everything like that, miter joints, I tend to use my table saw for that. I rarely use my router for joints unless it's stop joints or stop dados or dovetail splines, things like that. My table saw gets 85% of the use to make those joints. So if you're thinking of how to advance in your joinery, and you have the money, or you are saving up for that specific kind of tool, my opinion, and you may differ from this, but a table saw is probably one of the best investments in a wood shop that you can make. If you have the room for it, it can do a crap load of stuff when it comes to joinery.
Yeah, I actually agree. It's not only going to help you advance your joinery experience, but it's also going to help you along your woodworking path and expand your knowledge and your capability of building bigger and better projects. The only downfall of that is if the table saw you get doesn't have an arbor nut long enough to accept a dado stack, then your joinery now, especially if you're going to get into grooves and dados and rabbets, those are going to be a lot harder to complete using a single blade. It can be done if you have a flat grind blade. Mm-hmm. You just have to take many passes. So that's where you got to weigh your odds there. For me, my table saw won't accept anything greater than a 1/4 inch dado stack. And even at that, it's pushing it. My nut for my arbor is only hanging on by about 3 or 4 teeth. And that's not safe enough for me to want to use that all the time. Plus, the motor on mine is not powerful enough to spin it and keep it spinning without popping a breaker for an extended period of time. So, yeah, I have an 8-inch dado stack. You could go with a 6-inch. Takes a little less power to spin. But that's not going to solve the problem of whether your arbor nut is going to be long enough. So
yeah, you may only be able to put on like maybe a 1/2 inch thickness on a shorter arbor.
So
speaking of which, somebody asked me this question too, and you had just made mention of it about your motor strength. Since we're on the topic of joinery, if somebody bought a table saw or has a table saw that was used, what kind of RPM rating would they need, and like a minimal horsepower motor do they need to be able to cut dados using a dado stack? What I have on mine is a 1 3/4 horse motor, and I believe it spins at 3,850 RPMs. So I think the person that had asked me the question, his was around a 2,200 RPM, and it was like a horse and a half. I mean, I think that would still get the job done. It would probably bog down a little bit in maybe a more dense wood. Yeah. But I don't know what you have though.
I don't. You put me on the spot. I don't know what I have either. And it would take me a few minutes to actually find my table saw online to find the specs. But I'm pretty sure I have a 1 3/4 horsepower as well. I don't know if I would go, even just if you're not looking to spin a dado stack, I'm not sure I would ever go under 1.5 horsepower. In fact, I would almost lean to say don't go under 1 3/4 horsepower. Just because if you ever want to venture into like your 8/4 stock or your 1.5 stock, you get into your harder woods like a walnut, maple, wingy, babinga, any of those harder woods, you get much less than a horsepower and 3/4. You're going to have a hard time cutting through that. You're going to create a lot of burning. You're going to dull blades quickly. So if you can get away with it, stick with 1 3/4 horsepower table saw.
And even if your table saw doesn't come with a horse and a 3/4, you can take a new motor and retrofit it to your existing table saw. You don't have to go buy another table saw that might have a bigger motor. Because my dad stuck a 5 horsepower motor on a contractor saw. Yeah. It was a little overkill, but he did it.
Yeah. In fact, most 1 3/4 horsepower is still an excellent motor. You can look at like SawStop, and I think Powermatic still sells one, but I know SawStop for sure sells a cabinet saw that has a 1 3/4 horsepower motor. Mm-hmm. In fact,
they do that. Yeah, they do that because of you don't have to wire your shop for 220.
Exactly, and Matt Vanderlist has that one, and you can see him spinning a dado stack in many of his videos. So, 1 3/4 horsepower is definitely enough to spin a dado stack. Me, when I get a new table saw, I'm going for the full 3 horsepower. Might as well. I want to buy a cabinet saw, so I might as well spend the money and buy the 3 horsepower. It's not needed, but it's what I want. So,
well, it's all, that's the most important thing. It's whatever you want.
Exactly. I mean, each woodworker has their own journey, and some find woodworking through the minimalist tool they enjoy. I enjoy the process of building the piece of furniture, but I don't enjoy the process of having to tune the saw or make sure the blade's sharp enough, or make sure that I got to go with a thin kerf blade for thicker woods. I want to know my tool's capable of doing the job without me having to do something else to that tool. That makes me happy in the woodworking. So, in fact, if I could have somebody come set up my tool, if I could pay Mark Spagnolo to walk into my shop and set up my joiner and leave, and I don't have to touch it, but run a piece of wood across it, I'm a happy guy. I don't want to have to go out there and do that. Will Mark do that? I don't know. Mark, if you're listening, shoot me an email. Let's arrange something.
I like the idea.
So,
put me on that email, will you?
Yeah. I mean, he's done it enough. He's got videos out, so
yeah. See,
why not? Just come on. You need to come to Texas anyway. So, we definitely want to hear from you guys as far as what joints you like to use, what your go-to joint is, and what you would consider basic or more advanced. What we think is definitely not the most accurate information. It's our opinion, and I'm sure you all have your own opinion on what type of joinery and how advanced you think it is. We want to hear that because that helps us learn, and that's why we're here, to share our knowledge and to gain knowledge.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people out there that probably think we're idiots, but
Look.
Or all 5 of our listeners there.
Look, I'm pretty sure I can walk out into my living room right now. My wife already thinks I'm an idiot. I'm not worried about it.
But yeah, we definitely appreciate the interaction. I'm trying to find who sent us that question. Do you have the name of that person that sent us that?
No, I think it was on Facebook somewhere, but I don't know.
That's where I'm looking right now. But whoever sent that to us, we greatly appreciate that. I just can't find it right offhand. But those kind of questions really help us get the show going in the direction that I'm sure that you guys want it to go. Because that's stuff that you guys want to hear and want to hear our opinion about, even though it may not be the most precise, correct opinion. It still helps us get a better show going. So having you guys send us questions and suggestions and things like that are really, really appreciated. And we do appreciate that question that was left for the types of joints.
Yeah. And, we definitely want to apologize that we haven't had a show out sooner, but, like we talked about at the beginning, we've been on vacation, and we've both, and it just so happens that we're both hitting it at the same time, kind of a burnout that we're going to work our way through. But we've just had our own busy schedules, and we've had to postpone the show, but we didn't want to miss an episode. And that's what was important to us, not to miss an episode. We want to still give you at least those 2 episodes a month. And as we get more interaction and more feedback from you guys, we may move in another direction and try to give you guys more content than twice a month. But right now, that was important that we didn't miss that. So you can definitely look for a show next week as well. We want to be back on a regular schedule come next week. So,
and we've got another guest in mind, thanks to some viewer suggestions for our next show. So,
I didn't tell you, Drew. That guest,
no, you didn't.
That guest is confirmed.
Sweet.
So,
you didn't tell me that.
We can talk more about it when we stop recording. But yeah, in fact, this guest is a suggestion from you guys, the listeners. So.
Yeah, we'll just have to. We'll have to have a good show on that one because it'll be pretty cool. I'm kind of excited to get to talk to him.
Except I'm not sure I really want to feel dumb. I guess. I mean, because he's pretty smart. Let's face it.
Smart.
So.
Yeah. Don't give it away though. That's enough.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well. If you would like your question answered on air, guaranteed, or you just want to hang out with us after the show, because we're a bunch of awesome guys that you just want to hang out with and have a conversation with.
Hit the nail on the head.
Exactly. Then head over to Patreon at www.patreon.com/Woodshop101 to become a patron of our Patreon campaign. And there's a load of different reward levels for you guys to grab. And one of them is to hang out with us, which surprisingly hasn't been picked yet.
And it would just make your month if you did.
Yeah, it would.
I mean, we're just, like you said, awesome. Well, I had a pretty good time with this particular episode. I don't know about you, Jeremy, but
it's good to be back. It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. I can go to bed happy now.
Me too.
Let's see. I like I said, I had a good time. But if you like the show, guys, and you want to hear more, there's plenty of ways that you can find us. I mean, we're on iTunes, we're on YouTube, we're through a streaming, live streaming. I wouldn't call it live, but maybe just a streaming on the website of woodshop101podcast.com/listen. You can subscribe to that. Also, remember, subscribing and commenting and sharing with your friends helps get us in the public eye. And sponsorships can be given to us later in the future if we are more well-known. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions, you can email us at woodshop101podcast@gmail.com. You can leave us a voicemail through Skype, but we are having some difficulty right now with it in regards to Mac users. And Jeremy and I are unfortunately Mac users. So we're working through that. But if you can't reach us through Skype, There are ways through email and Facebook that you can reach us, and I believe we are also on Twitter. Just search our name, Woodshop 101 Podcast. We post new episodes for this show every 2 weeks, unless we're just procrastinating like we are now.
Then you'll get one every week.
You'll get one every week then. But we hope to hear from you guys with more feedback on subject matters that we can talk about, as well as suggestions for special guests like we had last week with April Wilkerson. That was an awesome show. I like that one. So from Jeremy and myself, we wish you guys well, and please remember to be safe in your shops. And we will see you guys next time. Jeremy, you want to join in?
I do.
1, 2, 3.
Boom.
Boom.